Right, so the schedule we're going to start off with Sean, you're going to do your initial introduction. Robert, you're going to do your introduction shortly thereafter. We'll then move into some questions that I have for the candidates, and then we'll open up the floor to you to ask any questions yourselves. Now, what I would say is we can be quite relaxed about this, and during the course of the conversation, certainly after the candidates have given their initial pitch and we start moving into the conversation, if you have a burning question that's related to the topic in hand, please just indicate to me and say, please, I've got a question on that matter. Quite happily accept those questions whilst we're going through that second stage. All I ask is you just be respectful of one another and give time for everybody to ask a question if they wish to do so. And I have a number of questions that have been presented through the Facebook chat as well that I'll be putting to you chaps. And then we'll have closing arguments, and then we should all be home in time for tea and medals by around about 5:05, I would say. Okay, so my name's Gray Laws, I'm the moderator. I don't live in Bicester, I actually live in Winslow in the county of Buckinghamshire. So I'm an impartial moderator today. I have no dog in the fight, if you like. Though I do have an interest in Bicester because I work here. I work for Zeta Specialist Lighting as a project manager. I'm a chair of the governors for Bicester Technology Studio School. I'm a partnership manager for the Bicester Chamber, and I'm also a partnership manager for Bicester Vision. So I'm really interested in Bicester, but in terms of what today's all about, I'm entirely impartial. So, without further ado, Sean, would you like to take the opportunity to introduce yourself? You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, fine, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. For those that don't know, my name is Sean Gall, and I'm the Conservative Party candidate in next month's local elections. I think that representing a national party, I've got a difficult job on my hands during this election because it's not about Brexit, it's about local matters, and everybody wants to talk about Brexit. And I'm happy to address it, but actually what we can do next month if elected is deal with local concerns. I'm hoping that that's what I can get across this evening. I think that I've got a challenge on my hand tonight being the Conservative Party candidate because it's not a particularly cool thing for me to do. It's certainly not the sexy thing to be doing, but what we are is we're trusted usually as Conservative party candidates. We're trusted to get the balance right between how much of your money we take off you, and then we're trusted to deliver important public services with that money. We're also trusted to not promise the earth, and we're trusted to behave responsibly. So other parties in previous elections will promise to do more, and they will argue that local government and national government should do more. But as the Conservative Party, we will try and strike that right balance, because when we do more, we have to take more of your money. And the reason why I'm with the Conservative Party is because I appreciate the balance they try to strike with the amount of money that we take off you in taxation, and then try to deliver the very best public services that we can do with that. I'm also proud to be part of the Conservative Party because we try to, rather than chase outrightly popular policies, we try to behave responsibly and try and get it right. So for instance, lots of people in the last 3 years that I've been a councillor have wanted to talk about why we don't have free parking in Bicester, and that goes into what I'm saying about behaving responsibly. The parking generates a significant income stream to the council, which is then used to deliver important services. And the Conservative Party, or Bicester Conservatives, before they consider this expensive policy, will need to understand what new taxes will need to be introduced that will be acceptable to you, the taxpayer, to replace that loss of income, or what services can be dropped that again would be acceptable to you as the customer in this relationship. And that's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean about the choice between behaving responsibly rather than chasing what is popular. So that's why I'm a proud Conservative Party member, candidate, activist, and hopefully elected representative next month. Why me? Why Sean Gall? Why Bicester East? That's easy because this is where I've grown up. So Hendon Place, just behind us, was my home. Glory Farm Primary School was my primary school. The Cooper School was where I went to have my secondary education. Rainbow Preschool was where young Miles goes. Longfields Primary School just down the road is where I'm hoping is going to go in September. Launton Meadows Play Area that's just been refurbished because of Bicester Conservatives. Sunderland Drive Play Area that's about to be refurbished. They were my play areas, okay, that's where I used to play as a kid. This is where I did my paper round. So because of my connections with this part of the town, it's very easy for me to get really passionate about this part of the town, very easy for me to get very vocal and very noisy, and if necessary, very stroppy about this part of the town, because I want good things to happen here. You know, so when I hear about outdoor gym equipment sloshing around in the public system that needs to be installed somewhere, it's very easy for me to quickly make a case for Keble Road play area being a destination, which we was then successful for. When Bicester East Community Centre write to me and tell me that they're worried about their future because they're currently operating from a temporary structure that can't last forever, it's very easy for me to get really passionate and really noisy about what are we going to do about making sure they have a more permanent structure and a more permanent future. So those are the things that I have done as your town council over the last 3 years, and those are the type of things I hope to continue to do if I'm successful in winning your vote next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean. Very good. Anybody got any burning questions now before we move on to Robert? No? Okay. Robert, over to you.
Thanks. My name's Robert Nixon. I'm the Green Party candidate for the Chilwell District Council elections in the Bicester East Ward, as well as the Town Council. I'm one of 3 Green Party candidates for the Town Council elections. One of the reason I'm really passionate about the Green Party and standing for the Green Party and trying to increase Green Party representation at all levels of local government and national government is because I've seen the work that Green Party councillors have done elsewhere in the country. For example, in Huddersfield, there was a Green Party councillor that made sure that every home was able to get free insulation installed so people pay less on their energy bills. And in Oxford, we've got our 2 Green Party councillors on the City Council, and they were able to get the City Council to commit to to making Oxford carbon neutral by 2030. So it's those measures that we're not just sort of tackling climate change by doing those things. We're also making people's energy bills cheaper and making the areas that we represent sort of healthier and more cheaper and fairer places to live. That's really what I would be sort of working for if I was able to be your representative in the Bicester East Ward. I would be really looking at all aspects of how I can work to make Bicester East a more sustainable place to live. So how we can sort of locally meet our meet our commitments to stopping climate change, but the Green Party is really about how we can do that at the same time as making our improving the lives of local people. So that's what I will be seeking to do if elected to the Bicester East Ward at the town and the district level.
Excellent, thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, well, I've got one for you straight away. Great to hear that you both want to be involved in this ward. So what specifically do you intend to do in this ward?
Yes, okay, brilliant. So specifically, one of the things I've been looking at is tackling the problem of the litter on the town walk. So I don't know whether any of you use the town walk. It was an issue that was raised with me through a 60-second survey that I did in the area, there's a huge amount of litter on the sort of near in and around that path, and I've been working with Network Rail to actually try and get them to clear up that litter, and one of the things I want to do after that is try and get another litter bin put into that area to hopefully stop that happening again. Other things I want to look at is particularly electric vehicle charging points. That's something that I'm quite passionate about as an electric vehicle driver myself. I think one of the key barriers to people adopting a cleaner vehicle is the quite valid concerns about where they're going to charge it. So that's one of the things that I would really like to look at, particularly with if the Bicester East Community Centre is going to be redeveloped, how that electric vehicle charging infrastructure could be incorporated there and in other places in the ward. And also for people who haven't got off-street parking, so they can't have a home charging point, that sufficient public charging infrastructure is put in place so that that becomes an option for them. So those are just two examples of what I might be trying to do. I would be one councillor elected, so I want to be sort of realistic in what I would be able to do over my term. But I've got lots of other ideas that people could, if they're interested, sort of question me on if they wanted to.
Yeah. Sean.
Okay, so me, what do I want to do if elected next month? So more of what I've done. Okay, so I've grown up in this ward, as I've mentioned. So the last 20 to 30 years I've been here. Never has Launton Meadows play area looked so good. In a few months' time, never will Sunderland Drive play area look as good as it's going to look. Never has Garth Park looked so good. Never has the skate park looked so good. Our green areas, yes, they're not perfect, and yes, I'm often frustrated when I see bits overgrowing and litter in places, but I'm straight onto officers, and within a few days it is taken care of. When people write to me, I do my damnedest to do what I can to deliver for them. So there was one chap that wrote to me that said before the installation of the blue line, he didn't want it running outside of his house because he didn't want hundreds and thousands of marches parading when he was doing his washing up. And everybody told me there's nothing I can do. Once these plans are in motion, there's very little you can do, and forget about it, and that's it. And anyway, we argued, and we managed to work with the officers to work out where else this blue line could be routed, and in the end it was rerouted, and so it's a very little win, but I was very proud of that win because somebody asked me to do something and I did do that. What do I plan to do in the next term? More of that, so more of working for people, more of delivering on people's requests, and then as a side project, if you like, an awful lot of my time has been spent on our town centre. So for the last year I've been the Mayor of Bicester, and I've been key in a campaign which was See Bicester, Experience Bicester and Shop in Bicester, getting people to use their town centre first, because it's all very well complaining about a lost business, but if we don't use that business then it is inevitable, it will go. So we're hopefully about to see more big things come off the back of that town centre campaign. So we're about to have a government czar come and work with us, a man that was influential in getting government to introduce business rate relief for small businesses. He will hopefully very soon be coming to work with Bicester and our town centre, and that is off the back of the campaign that I managed to get launched by the Bicester Conservative Party at Bicester Town Council. So more of all of that and some. That's what I plan to do if elected next month.
Any questions on that? Yes.
How do you compete in one of you is going to be elected and one of you isn't? So, we're listening to each of your good points. How are you prepared to say, for example, Robert, how you're going to be better than Sean at, particular things?
Yeah.
Sean, are you able to say you're going to be better than Robert? Are you able to shoot each other down?
Okay, can I take that first, or?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
So I don't plan to shoot down anything that Robert says, because I expect everything that
we have a choice.
I expect everything that Robert cares about, I will care about. The choice between everybody is prioritised, isn't it? A priority. So I can't be a champion of everything that is a priority to everybody, because if everything's a priority, then nothing by default is a priority. So I will have certain things I'm really, really passionate about, such as our town centre, such as our play areas, such as OYAP that work with our teenagers, and those would be the things that I will be advocating very, very strongly. And Robert might be advocating other areas, such as green charging points and things like that I would consider to be important, but not as important as the young of Bicester. So I'd say that the choice before you next month is, where are your priorities leaning more towards what our priorities are? But I doubt I'll be disagreeing with Robert on anything this evening.
Robert.
Yeah, so I would say that I'm very interested in doing politics in as cooperative way as possible. So I recognise that there is a choice between us, and I pretty much agree with what Sean said about it being about priorities. But I think that, particularly with the work that the North Oxfordshire Green Party has done with the Liberal Democrats in Kidlington, I'm really proud of that. And it's for me being involved in politics. If I'm elected next month, I realise that I'm going to have to be able to work with other parties on the council, and that is something that I'm really willing to throw myself into. To get things done for the Bicester East area, because if one, say I'm elected and we've got one Green Council on the council, I'm not going to be able to achieve very much if I just shut myself off to everyone else and don't listen to what people like Sean have to say. Whereas what I'm really interested in doing is working with other parties like the Conservatives, like independents that we've got standing in Bicester this time, to achieve things for Bicester East. I'm not in it for any other reason. I want to get stuff done in the local area. I'm not very interested in the whole getting one up on each other on the party political level. For me, it's about very much about what I can achieve as a councillor elected.
Thank you very much for that, Robert. Thank you for the question. Just hold. We've got a whole section at the end. So anything that hasn't been covered off in this, we're going down a certain track with this. Anything that hasn't been covered off, you can pick up in the final open floor questions. Okay. So thank you for that. Interesting point you picked up there, and I think maybe echoed by other people. It certainly has been on the Bicester chat. And that is, to what extent does party-based politics play a part in what's happening here today? Are we on the right side or the wrong side of this? These are big guns, big money coming in potentially. So where does party politics play a part?
I'm happy to take that as a sitting councillor.
Okay,
so party politics, it isn't mandated from 10 Downing Street what we're going to be doing in Bicester, by the head of the Conservative Party. So how party politics works is the controlling party will determine themselves what the agenda is going to be, and everybody within that group has one vote and one say, and the game is trying to be able to convince the majority within your group that the thing that you care most about becomes the agenda item, the thing that you as a group are going to pursue. And then once you've been successful in convincing the majority of your group that that is the thing that we need to be doing in Bicester, then that becomes policy for that group. And then that's how party politics then works within the council chamber, because then if, for instance, I said every play area in Bicester now needs to be refurbished, and I convinced my group that that's what we need to do, and then we agreed that that's what we're going to do, then that becomes the policy within the council chamber, because party politics would ensure that we stick to our view. That's how party politics work. There's no mandating against your will, because people would just leave the group. It's as simple as that. We're effectively volunteers being councillors. We don't have to do what we don't want to do. We do it because we enjoy it. So that is as much as party politics works. It's not a conspiracy. It's not a smoky room somewhere. It's just everybody has one say, one vote, and hopefully you can get your group to adopt that as their policy.
Robert.
Yeah. So the question is, I come across this concern quite a bit, and it's sort of about. First thing I would say that the Green Party doesn't have a huge amount of money, so it's not about Green Party representatives ganging together and being in it for the money. It's definitely not about that. And equally, as Sean hasn't got anyone dictating from above what the Conservatives in Bicester have to do. I haven't got Caroline Lucas in my ear telling me what the Green Party is supposed to do. What I'd say is very much that where in areas like Oxford and Reading, where we've got Green Party councillors elected, what those councillors are very effective at doing, and what I hope to be able to be very effective at doing if I was to be elected, is really working with their local communities. So going out, talking to people, what are their issues, what are the problems that they're having, and then translating that into sort of what Greens are doing on the council, and really being advocates for their own community. So for us, it's like really not about as a party, as I said just a bit ago, getting one up on the opposition. It's about being effective advocates for our communities.
Okay, thank you for that. Have you both been out knocking on doors?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's the mood?
Can I take that?
He asked knowingly.
Exasperation, frustration. Everybody wants to talk about Brexit, as I touched on earlier, and they want to know, if I'm elected next month as a councillor on Bicester Town Council, what am I going to be able to do about Brexit? Nothing. I can't. I don't think anybody else can either, even the Prime Minister's struggling, so I can't fix Brexit, that's for sure. But if I can somehow try and separate what we do locally and the teams that deliver it locally away from the national gridlock that we're all frustrated by. I'm actually proud of what we, the Bicester Conservatives, have been doing, and I know I will be proud of what we will continue to do if we're elected. So somehow I need to try and get people to separate what's happening nationally. Yes, we're all frustrated. Yes, we're all fatigued by it. But actually, locally, it's nothing to do with Brexit. It's all about local matters and local concerns. And if somehow you can try and look at your local candidates and what they're about and what they've done and what they want to do, then that's my challenge this campaign season.
Thanks, Sean. What are your experiences?
So my experiences, I think there are very much the two groups of people I've encountered. I think two broad groups. I think one is like what Sean's encountered. People very frustrated with the national picture, and I would go along the same lines as what Sean said there. As a Bicester Town Councillor, as a Cherwell District Councillor, I'm not going to be able to do anything about Brexit. Really, I'm not going to have very much influence over Brexit. So the whatever the Green Party's policy is on Brexit or on the European Union is not particularly relevant to these elections, because that's not something I'm going to have any influence over if I was to be elected. So there's that, and that's sort of what I'm trying to say to those people is sort of look at the local issues, and which councillor which candidate do you think is going to be the most effective representative of your area? There's another group is people that seem to be looking for something different to the main two parties. And I think the Green Party at this election do present a positive alternative to the main two parties, and that's really encouraging to see that people are looking at the work of that other Green Party councillors have done across the country, and seeing that actually we can appeal to former Labour voters, former Conservative voters that are looking for some councillors that are hard-working advocates of their own communities.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Robert. You mentioned these local issues, so we do have local issues, don't we? We've got not just the ones in our ward, the ward here, but also just think of the town and indeed the region. So let's just unpick some of those. I'm interested in both of your opinions on things that have actually been raised on Facebook, and I've picked up crime prevention, county lines, this whole drug thing that's happening across county lines, and also illegal encampments of travellers. These are hot topics, and they cause degrees of frustration for everybody in this ward and beyond. So where do you stand on antisocial activities like that? What stand will you make on it, Robert? To start on the illegal encampments, I think I've had a discussion with Sean about this, and I think we're very much sort of in agreement about the fact that what's needed in Cherwell is more legal areas for these people to be living, and that will take them away from the park and rides and places like this that are sort of having an impact on local people trying to use those services, So I think in Cherwell we need to have, and I think Sean agrees, a better provision of legal traveller encampments. Yeah. Okay.
And so that'll be my take on that one.
Thank you. County lines.
County lines, yeah. Okay. So I think that is a very valid concern, and I think the Green Party broadly is sort of talking a lot about how can we take people away from using drugs and those sorts of substances in a way that's sort of not so heavy-handed. So what we've seen, I think, with the war on drugs is what it's been called, is quite a heavy-handed approach, and there's I personally I think there's a certain place for that. But I think it needs to be combined with an approach that gives people an alternative and shows people an alternative way of doing those the alternative path to take, I guess, is the right word for that.
Okay.
And it was
crime prevention.
Crime prevention. Yes. Yeah, so moving on from crime prevention. So I think I think what's really important there is working with local communities, because I think very often, sometimes you have a situation where crime prevention is done in a way that's not in tandem with local communities, and I think that can only get you so far, and I think you have to do this sort of work with people who live in the area, and that's the way you're going to make the most progress on that. I think it's quite sort of how do we prevent crime is quite a broad thing to address.
I guess I'm just interested in how you think you would begin it. I'm not suggesting that you need to solve it. That's forgive me if I gave you that impression, but I appreciate that. Sean, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I know my limits, I know what I can do, and I know that I personally do not have all the answers for everything. So I go to the people that do have the answers. Every time there is an opportunity to speak to the police, to speak to the inspector that covers Bicester, I ask them, what do they need from us? What do they need from us as councillors? What do they need from us as politicians? And what do they need from us as the council? And every time they tell us, we need this, we need that, we need the next thing, then I go ahead and I argue for that. It's quite straightforward for me. I don't know until I ask, and then once they tell me, then I try and make the case for that. So Vicky Lee's one of our police officers, a very good police officer in Bicester. She said, for antisocial behaviour, we need something for the kids to do. Sort out that rubbish skate park. So that's what we did. We replaced it. We spent £150,000 on it. And then if the police tell us that this is the next thing that we need, then we will go ahead and we will listen to them. We will act on their recommendations. We trust them. We work well with them. But then when I'm at Cherwell District Council and I'm chairing a particular meeting and I've got the inspector there and I say, what else do you need from us? And they're saying, it's all good for the moment. We're just going to crack on with what we've got on the go. Then that leaves me, that's fine, we'll leave them to it. But we are in regular contact with them and I will always listen to the experts.
Okay, thank you.
On illegal encampments, which is an absolute hot potato, it gets everybody incredibly upset when it happens, myself included. And it's a challenge, it's a real challenge. And firstly, the travelling community, we have to accept they have a right to exist. That's the first thing. The second thing is they will move around because that is their community, that is what they do. Now, if they've got nowhere to go, it's inevitable that we're going to have illegal encampments. I'm not for 1 second condoning illegal encampments, but that's the challenge that the police have. So when an illegal encampment happens in Bicester, rightly, the public is very upset and they're on to their local representatives. What are you doing about this? Local representatives are not going to carry out the eviction order themselves. Then they go to the police and we say to the police, what are you doing about it? And they say, where are we sending them to? And then if the response they get back is, I don't know, I don't care, just get them gone, it's a challenge and it's not a very mature way of going about it. So I would be arguing for Cherwell is a very big place. Cherwell covers Banbury, Bicester and Kidlington. That's a lot of square miles that we have. I think we need to have a more mature conversation about where legal encampments can go, and then in the event of illegal encampments cropping up, the police have assured me that they will not hesitate to move them on. And when you have legal encampments, you have rules, you have deposits, you have to be rule obeyers rather than rule breakers. So it is the next positive thing, and if we don't pursue that by way of an honest conversation, we will continue to circle around in what we've been having over the last few years. So I want to try and approach this in a very pragmatic way and a very non-emotional way, and follow the evidence, follow the advice of the police.
Okay. And county lines.
County lines. So I don't know about county lines. I don't know what the answers are. But as I said in my first introduction, I would ask the police. I would say, if we have this, and it sounds like we do have this problem, what do they need from us as Bicester Town Council and as Cherwell District Council? I don't know what I'm arguing for until they tell me. If they tell me there's a particular policy that we could be adopting or a particular thing that we could be taking ownership of, that's absolutely fine. That will be the thing that I will argue for.
Forgive the tone of this is going into some problematic areas, but we've got to grasp some of these nettles. So I've got another grenade I'm going to throw towards you, gentlemen. So be ready to catch this one. Bicester's growing. It's the fastest growing town in Europe, right? It's going to double in population. It's double its population by 2030. I think the figure is, isn't it? We're part of the growth corridor, the Oxford to Cambridge arc. That's kind of drawing down central government money that could scale up significantly any plan that currently exists. So growth is happening. There's a frustration in our community about unpopular planning policies. We're seeing warehouses going up. We're seeing tons of houses being created that seem to be pricing local people out of the market. There's a degree of frustration. The question's over, is it sustainable? Where is all of this going to end? Will it ever end? Where do you stand on this?
Who first, Graham?
Sean.
Okay. So unpopular planning is quite separate to the fastest growing town in Europe. The fastest growing town in Europe, people can get frustrated by when they're Bicester through and through. They've lived it all their life and the town is changing before their very eyes. There is a not so obvious benefit to new houses, which is we get income from central government in the form of new homes bonus. This new homes bonus funds what we do. When we're funded by a significant proportion of new homes bonus, that's money that we don't need to ask from you, and that's services that we don't need to cut. So in the last 9 years in Bicester, we have been the beneficiary of this new homes bonus because your Cherwell District Council element of the council tax has not gone up for 9 years. It's been frozen for 9 years, and with all the cost pressures of government reductions and inflation and all of that's happened, and your tax has not gone up by Cherwell District Council. In addition, not a single service has been cut. So there is a not so obvious benefit to homes going up. Now, it needs to be done in a responsible way, and as local councillors, that's what we're there to do, which is if we can't prevent the new houses going up altogether, well, maybe we can be part of where do they go. Maybe there's a better place for them to go. So on to unpopular planning proposals. I think I've been abject of one unpopular planning. So just opposite the airfield, Skimmindish Lane, there's a care home that's being built now. So as local councillor, I had people write to me to say they was furious, they was upset, it was the wrong place for the care home to go for a multitude of reasons. And what was I, as local councillor, going to do? I used every democratic means to have that rejected, and successfully. Okay, so it was rejected at Bicester Town Council. I then went to Cherwell District Council. I lobbied every single member of the planning committee, and I managed to get the majority of them to agree that it was the right proposal, wrong location. So they voted to reject the proposal. The developers spent some money on expensive lawyers who then came back and said, you lot got it all wrong and all the arguments are rubbish, go do it again. I couldn't believe it, so we did it again. I managed to get that committee to reject it again. So now I'm up to 3 votes against that proposal. Okay, and then it goes to appeal, and the inspector was brought in. An inspector is a government person, independent of everybody, and they managed to nullify all of the democratic votes that had happened. So as elected representatives, I did my job. As public did their jobs by getting me on site. The institutions available to cast the decisions, the Bicester Town Council and the Cherwell District Council, did their job by listening to the elected representatives. But the laws worked against us, the National Planning Policy Framework. So I have a frustration with planning, because what happens if we follow all the rules correctly and we still get and we deliver what the public want, it can still be used against them. So I would say that we have a more national problem with with this as a live scenario. How to address that's probably taken up with our Member of Parliament and taken up at a national level, because it works locally. we voted it down, but it's still being built in the wrong location. So that's where I come with it. If somebody writes to me and says, right policy but wrong location, I will be there championing their cause, and successfully, because I've demonstrated that. But we have a problem.
So to go on to the unpopular planning, to start off with, I think that is again coming back to a desire that I have to sort of explore ways to better consult with local communities. So not just relying on people to write to me as a representative, although I will absolutely take those communications on board if I receive them, but actually going out into the community and saying to people, what is concerning you about sort of developments at the moment, and also exploring the possibility of having more local planning referendums where we have difficult decisions that need to be made, so that people can actually directly have their say. And that's something that the Green Party is very keen on promoting, is the idea of involving people more in the democratic processes that are going on. On to the expansion of Bicester, I guess. I think that it is in general a good thing but I think there needs to be some consideration on a few things. So firstly, the affordability of housing, and also the availability of rented accommodation, I think is very important, because yes, for some people it's going to sort of owning their own home is going to be the right thing for them. But for some other people, renting a property for a period of time is going to be the right decision in that scenario. So we have to sort of cater for those differences in circumstance, and at an affordable price. Also, I think on the location, I think the expansion needs to be done in the right places. So what are the policies that the Green Party have that I'm very keen to champion is the idea of having every new home being built within a 5-minute walk of some green space. So that's been successfully done in a number of areas where Greens have been elected. And what that means is that people can very easily get out without having to sort of drive somewhere and enjoy our outdoor environment, it doesn't. You're not going to have a situation where people feel hemmed in by development. So that would be my view on that.
Okay, thank you very much. We're about to move into opening the floor for questions, but just before we do, I'm just going to do some quick fire yes/nos with you. Okay, so I just need to know these things. These are things that people have fed to me through various channels. Do you get paid for your work?
Can I take that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes and no. It's not a wage, it's an allowance. And the allowance is provided to cover the anticipated cost that you would incur for being a councillor.
What does that mean?
So it means that I will be expected to drive to meetings to various places.
Right.
That will cost me in fuel. I think that's probably the predominant cost.
Okay.
And so that's what an allowance is there.
So out-of-pocket expenses.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's obviously going to be the same for me if I were to be elected in terms of being a councillor. In terms of me doing my work for the Green Party, no, the Green Party don't pay me at all for that. I do it entirely on a voluntary basis because I really want to champion the policies that the Green Party are putting forward.
Thank you. It was mentioned that a member of this ward had a canvasser knock on the door, and this canvasser appeared to know that this person's name and also how they voted. Is that true? Do you know this?
Kind of. So we have an electoral register that we have printed, which is a public document, and we'll use that to knock on the doors of those that we know to be a registered voter. And then we will record if they say that they are an avid Conservative and they vote Conservative every single election, and we want to know where they live. We want to see if we can recruit them. But as well, if it helps us build up a data on where our voters are. And all political parties will do this, and at election time you've got one day to knock on however many tens of thousands of doors. You probably want to reserve your energies and time for the doors that you know have declared an interest in voting for you, and then we also keep that for the next election to see if there's a pattern in voting behaviour. It's all standard practices that all political parties use.
Just let me just clarify. You said that if you are going to knock on doors, because you've only got a finite number of hours, you would knock on the doors of people who already have indicated they're going to vote
on polling day.
Right.
Because you can't knock on every door. So the canvass session would be knocking on all doors and selling the Conservative, the Green, the Labour message, and then on polling door you knock on the doors to encourage those that you think are most likely to vote for you.
So keeping records, GDPR, is that a concern?
I imagine GDPR does apply to us because I've just had to give them my preferences for the Conservative Party, so we'll be fully compliant on whatever the rules are.
Okay, fine. Let's open up the floor. Questions? Anybody got a question that you'd like to put to these gentlemen?
As challenging as possible, please. Come on, Will, you're going to have one.
Well, I want to pick up on what was said about the planning and the new homes, the rate Bicester's growing. It seems to me that there must be some local power. There must be, I guess that's true. Into the planning, perhaps. We've got all these new homes going on. I was pleased to hear that Rob was talking about affordable rents. I'm very, very concerned about local rents. So I run the Salish Lobby, we do a homeless project here. So that's my concern really. And in the time that I've been doing that, which is 4 years now, I can't think of a person who's managed to rent privately, who's come to us homeless or a risk. It's just not possible. Occasionally people come into the room, but it's usually very insecure and a bit dodgy.
Okay. What's your question on? I mean, it's good to hear this, but throw something.
What can be done? Given that it seems wrong to me that we've got so many houses going up and yet it's not doing anything to bring local rents down. Is there anything that can be done about that?
I'm happy to. Or Ray, do you want to say?
I didn't mind.
Go for it, Rob.
Yeah, sure. Okay. As I said earlier on, I think what's vitally important is that while all of these houses are being built in Bicester, that we make sure that for people that live in the town, for young people that are growing up in the town, for people that are currently homeless, that we have got affordable social housing available, and this is a national problem, but there are this is something that local representatives can be sort of advocating for, and but particularly as Cherwell is responsible for planning, and I think that the important thing here is that. Yes, it's important that for some people that we make it easy for affordable to buy their own home, but equally we need to have that provision for affordable rented accommodation for people that is more suitable.
Yes.
Whoever builds the property, whoever owns it thereafter.
Sean, perhaps you can.
Yeah. So I was just going to come back to Will and then try and touch on your point. So, what are the levers that you can use against your politicians and your representatives that they can then use to help the problem that seems to be a big issue. Well, currently our policy within the Conservative group on Chilwell District Council is of a settlement of 10 or more dwellings. Our policy is 30% of those have to be of an affordable nature. And if that's the case that we're happy with that and unhappy with that, the lever there is to increase or decrease that. So I would suggest to you, Will, that you now lobby whoever your councillors are next month. That 30% needs to be whatever percent instead. And then additionally, I've just made a note, Gardeners Close is something that Chilwell District Council and their build team have just built. 42 affordable rented apartments that have just come onto the market off the back of, you know, Chilwell and the policies that we're pursuing, and that's off the back of a Conservative controlled council. So there are things happening, there are levers that could be pulled, but we just need to make more noise about things that we care about.
Robert, so yeah, I'll just come back on that. I really think that you know, yes there are some affordable accommodation coming onto the market, but it's really not enough to meet the needs of local people. And you know, I've been out talking to people, and you know, just the other week met someone in Sheep Street that was saying that yes, that you know that's a real concern for them, that affordable housing, and you know, this is very small amounts that we're talking about of the percentage of the overall number of properties that are being built, and you know what we have is a situation where you know it can feel very much like that these properties are being built for not for Bicester people, they're being built for you know, people who are coming from outside to maybe work in London or somewhere else, and you know we really need much more affordable rents, as I've said, but affordable properties in general, for particularly for young people as well, and you know, people who live locally, so that they can have a decent place to live.
Would I be able to come in on that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So isn't that what politics is we identify an issue, and then councillors and politicians are lobbied, and then rules are changed. So we had it a couple of years ago, Will, where there was something controversial coming into the town centre that you wasn't happy with. So you lobbied your councillors, and then we had our meetings, we had our discussions, and we changed the policy. So at the moment, I've not had one person write to me that our 30% threshold of affordable housing is not enough. So that's
But
probably...
are you going out and talking to them?
Sorry?
Are you going out and talking to people and finding out whether that's
I canvass all the time. I canvass all the time.
But you know, I've had people say this to me. So you know, you're clearly not finding those people.
No, but what I would suspect is now we're probably going to have Will taking up the mantle and taking it up with local politicians. I would suspect that if you or me are elected next month, then one of us would continue that conversation. This is what happens, isn't it? You find out something is an issue, and then you take it on and you champion that cause. And if 30% isn't enough, what number does it need to be? 40%, 50%? Once we put a number on it, then we argue for it and we make the case. And that's what I do. I take it very pragmatically. If there's an issue, what's the solution? Argue for that solution if it makes sense.
It does sound like something that maybe it is such a well-known national issue that you would hope that that would already have been a priority locally. You know, it's an opportunity for us, given that there's so much building going on, that we can change the balance of housing. You know, I'm grateful that 30%'s there. I don't know, what other neighbouring areas would choose. But it's not something I've seen the effects of yet.
Yeah.
What are people's thoughts about a gentleman on the Facebook group? Just I'll read out his statement, and I'll be interested in your opinion, and also maybe get some feedback. You may have questions yourself on some of these things. I'll read it out. Although Brexit is a disaster, I do agree that the local issues need to be discussed. The farce of the Rodney House roundabout, the closing of adult care services, police numbers, GP super surgery, Bicester Community Hospital being underused, and the poor planning of urban expansion. These are topics, these are all hot topics. Where do you sit on any of these?
How long have we got?
5 minutes?
I don't think I need to make notes on all that.
Well, let's just pick up the first one that I think is important, from my humble opinion. GP super surgery. Okay. How do you sit on that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so if I can take this.
Sure.
Yeah? Okay, so the CCG, they decide how healthcare is delivered in our locality, which is really unfair because when it goes wrong, then it's us politicians that get in a neck and we have to try and somehow work our way through this. So at the moment, CCG and probably the clinical commissioning group, the Oxfordshire clinical commissioning groups, they decide everything that happens medically in Oxfordshire. So if they have determined that the current GP model, so a GP surgery on every estate in a town, in a district, is no longer viable for whatever reason, because we're living longer, there's more of us, whatever is the rationale behind it, if they've decided that the new model in 10, 15 years' time needs to be super surgeries, there won't be much we can do about that, as in changing that as a thing that they're going to do. But what I would then be arguing for is making sure that if that's the direction of travel, let's try and make that work for Bicester. Okay. So at the moment, the discussion is in 10 or 15 years' time, we're going to have 2 super surgeries in Bicester, which will replace the existing GP structure that we have across the town. Well, if that's...
You said in 15 years?
10 or 15 years.
Yeah, but isn't it going to be much sooner than that?
I'm in regular discussions with the CCG, and they're telling me that we're talking about a time frame of between 10 and 15 years.
I thought it was going to be in the next 2 to 3 years.
I'm not being told that, and we just had a member of the clinical commissioning group present the current thought strands to a committee within Cherwell District Council. So I don't think it's something that's going to happen tomorrow, and I don't think it's something that's going to happen as far away as 20 plus years. It's in the region of around 10 to 15 years. Now, if that's what they've decided is coming to Bicester, then all your politicians can do is try and argue it to deliver it as best as we can for people. So let's get if it is 2 surgeries, if it is 3 surgeries, whatever it is, let's get them in the best possible locations. If we then got issues that, I don't know, pulling locations out of a hat, let's say one of them is in Graven Hill. Well, what about my mother-in-law that lives on Langford Village that can't walk to Graven Hill? So what about bus links or whatever else? So if we won't be, I very much doubt that your local politicians will be able to change fundamentally something that the CCG is going to head to do. But what your politicians will be able to do is try and argue it to find a way to get it to fit with the Bicester community, and that is something that I'll be looking to do. I've asked them openly within the committee that I was chairing, said, are you prepared to work with your local politicians? Are you prepared to tell us what's going on? There's no good making up your mind and telling us what you've gone ahead and done and what you're going to do, because quite frankly, we're the ones that will get it in the neck, and then you be sure we'll be giving you hassle as well. So talk to us before you make up your mind and allow us to help shape the conversation and shape the decisions.
Thank you, Sean. Robert, do you want to come in?
So this is an issue that has come up on the doorstep for me, and this was a lady that was concerned that when this plan was put in place, that at the moment she can walk to her local GP surgery, and she wouldn't be able to do that. She'll just have to drive because you haven't got a public transport link in there. And that's one of the big concerns about this that I have, speaking as a Green Party member, is that by sort of centralising this in a smaller number of locations, we could actually be stopping people from living more healthier lives. By at the moment they're walking to a GP practice, they're going to be getting in their car and driving there. That doesn't seem to be very much progress being made there. So that's a big concern. That's the biggest concern I really have on this, and it's something that I've been trying to hearing on the doorstep that local people are concerned about that as well, that they're going to have to drive to these surgeries, right? Because if these surgeries are coming to Bicester and there's nothing that we can do about that, then what I would be looking to do is get those public transport links in place, and that so that people can make the choice to not drive, because that's something I'm very keen on doing as well. Reducing the number of car journeys that need to be made in the town.
I think that would be welcome.
Sorry,
just.
Sean, when you said you asked them CCG,
Yes.
if they were working, what was their answer?
Yes.
They did say
Yes. Yeah, and I was quite heartened by it, because as the point I was trying to make to them, it's no good it being us and them. Nobody wins out of that relationship. They don't win, we don't win, and the public don't win. But no, there was very, very, very forthcoming in saying that's fine. And she wanted to feed it back to her very senior people to say, you know, the Bicester lot, they want to work with us, and my request was, please don't come to us when you've made a decision, because that's too late. You know, talk to us before you've made the decision and allow us to shape the decision. So that way, when it has been made, when a decision has been made, we can champion it together, because who wins from Bicester Conservative blaming everything on the CCG? Nobody wins out of that. Nobody wins.
Did you want to come in?
Okay.
With a point.
I want to go back, Sean, to something you said earlier, that the council tax has been increased for 9 years. Is that what you said?
Yes, that is right. The Cherwell District Council share of the council
you
tax.
also said that during that time, also no services have been closed.
Yes.
Right. What about the children's centres that have been closed in Bicester? Don't you include that? Does that come outside that?
So this is where local government, it gets complicated, because you've got 3 councils looking after you, and those 3 councils do 3 different jobs. Okay, so the children's services that you're talking about was the Oxfordshire County Council, and I hate doing this. That's not me. I'm not on that body. I'm not. And at the moment, the only influence I have over Oxfordshire County council matters is I lean on our county councillors. So the Cherwell District Council, what it looks after, has not raised its share of council tax in 9 years. It's going to raise it just slightly now for its 10th year, because it couldn't do it for the 10th year, couldn't do it much longer. But for 9 years, it did not raise its council tax, and it did not shed a single service. And I would say that's because it's been ran well, and that's why I'm proud to be a Bicester Conservative. So that's what I was talking about there.
Okay.
Thank you.
The problem is that we actually in Bicester don't really have any children's centres anymore. We've got the one in opposite Garth, but that is specifically for disadvantaged children. You know, in other words, children with problems. There aren't any children's centres like there used to be for ordinary mothers to take their toddlers, you know, to meet other mothers. They don't exist anymore. And I would vote for anyone who will promise to bring that back.
Okay, well, I think on this, thank you for that. And this obviously allows me very adeptly to segue into our final section, where I'm going to invite you each to make a closing statement, and then we can further conversation. But let's have a hard stop with your closing statements, and perhaps you might like to address that direct request in your closing statements. We haven't pre-arranged this, so which of you would like to go first?
I'm happy to come in on that.
Thank you. This is your closing statement.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that there is sometimes a case for raising council tax. You know, when it, I think we have to be sort of pragmatic about these things, and we have to say, you know, what do we want to do? Do we want to sort of make everyone pay a little bit more to keep all of these services, or do we want to lose all of these services that, you know, has a real impact on vulnerable people, you know, so that people can save, you know, a small amount on their overall council tax bill. You know, it's that decision that we've got to make, and. So that would be come back on that, and I think that the cuts to things like children's centres that have gone on, you know, I would be in favour of, you know, raising council tax a small amount if that's what was needed to protect those services, because I think you know, for people who need those services, you know, it's really important to have those in place, and it's something that's worth paying for. In terms of my closing statement, I'd say that you know, if you should vote for the Green Party if you want a councillor that is, you know, committed to standing up for Bicester, committed to going out and being proactive in the local community. So something that I would be doing if I was elected would be to deliver a newsletter to everyone in the ward every 2 to 3 months to tell you what exactly it is that I'm doing on the local council, because I think that's one of the things that comes across on the doorstep. You know, people don't necessarily know what's going on in the local council, and that's one of the things that I'm really keen to do, is to communicate that back to the people who put me into power as to what we're actually doing with your time with your money. And the other thing would be that I would want to run a counsellor's surgery every month, that people can come to me with their queries or concerns in a neutral venue, and I'll be able to help them with those and answer those for them.
Okay, thank you very much. Sean, over to you for 3 minutes.
Great. So on the closing statement, which is separate to addressing your points head on, but they're so important that I think they need to be addressed head on. So and also it feeds into what Robert said. Should the council tax be raised a little bit to cover very important services? Yes. And the Oxfordshire County Council that looks after the children's services do raise to the maximum 2% threshold to cover their services. The difficult decisions that the Conservative-controlled Oxfordshire County Council had to make was the same decision that all county councils had to make across the country. And Northamptonshire did not make the decisions that Oxfordshire did, and Northamptonshire went bust. So that's the reality that Oxfordshire County councillors face, which is it's boom or bust. Is do we let this service go in its entirety, okay, and the whole local government across Oxfordshire needs to be reworked out, or do we make some difficult decisions? So that's the backdrop to the children's services. Now, I'm not standing for county council, so I can't argue for bringing back children's services. So I'm probably not going to be able to win your vote tonight, because that's the one thing that you said that I need to be able to do. What I can do for the young of Bicester is what I have done, which is the things that Bicester Town Council look after that touches the young, the things that Shelburne District Council looks after that touches the young, I will champion for. I'm a relatively young politician. I'm relatively young. I've got a 4-year-old son that's directly affected against the decisions that the council makes. So the play areas that we look after, OYAP that work with teenagers and our arts, I've made sure that I've been on the right side of the argument of making sure that they have money from Bicester Town Council to fund what they do, to fund more of what they do. So we do champion the young as Bicester Conservatives. But if we've got to make a difficult decision, that feeds into my closing statement, which is Bicester Conservatives, we aim to make the right decisions, not just the popular decisions. Okay, we aim to get it right, and it's really, really, really complicated. Every single thing that comes before us, whenever there's a decision for, there's a knock-on effect afterwards. Okay, and we will look at everything in the rounds. But one thing's for sure: if we've made a decision that you don't agree with, you will be able to talk to us. Okay, we will be able to explain rationally why we've decided what we've done. Okay. When it comes to being accessible, I think I'm as accessible as you can possibly get, and I know this because my email accounts, my social media inbox is just inundated all the time. Okay, I'm everywhere. I'm sure people are sick of hearing me about me, but I'm there, and I genuinely listen. And fair enough, there are some people that I can't get back to because they want to know what am I going to do about the people vandalising Garth Park at midnight on a Sunday. I'm not going to put on a cape and run down there and bust up some bad guys. But when there's some people that write to me with their genuinely heartfelt issues and complaints and whatever, I will stop what I'm doing. And
Super, thank you. Thank you. No, you're good. You were riffing, but in fairness, thank you. I hope you found this session useful. I think this was our first experiment as to whether or not we'd be well received and as to whether or not we might do these in the future. So we'd value feedback on that. This does draw a close to proceedings, and I'd like to thank you all for attendance today. And if you just respectfully request that you show your appreciation for the gentleman who actually turned out tonight. Thank you for coming. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Super.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you.